life getting harder and harder for working families like my own. I have seen a failure of our Congressmember to lead on issues of great importance, of moral importance, whether it is ICE or war and peace, or it's questions of affordability and the struggles of people on the streets of Jackson Heights, Forest Hills, Woodside, Bayside. I do not believe that she has fought. I do not believe that she has succeeded. I think it is clear that Democrats have failed to stop the Trump administration and its complete reign of terror in our communities, in Queens, New York City. And I think we need leaders who can speak with moral conviction. Every election is a choice, and I am very excited to present that choice to you all tonight. I'm sorry that Representative Meng cannot be here to explain her record and, frankly, to defend her record, but I will draw that contrast for you tonight. Once again, I'm happy to be here. I am grateful that you all are here giving up your evening on a beautiful day in Queens, and I'm excited to answer your questions and also take questions from everyone here tonight.
All right, thank you for an amazing opening statement. And let's get straight into question one. This is my first time moderating, so please bear with me. All right, so question one is concerning the obvious contrast here. So Congressman Meng has represented New York State for over a decade and would likely point to experience, seniority, constituent services, and federal funding delivered to the district as reasons voters should support her re-election. You have argued that the district needs a different kind of leadership. What specifically is not working in New York 6 today, and what would you do differently over the next 2 years if elected?
This is what's not working in New York 6 today. This is what's not working. I'm sorry, Representative Meng has been invited half a dozen times now to have a candidate forum, not even a debate, and she can't show up because she cannot explain or defend her record. This is what's not working. And when I mean she doesn't show up, I need to tell a story. There was a 6-year-old girl at PS 89 in Elmhurst in August of last year. Her name was Dinah. She and her mother were detained at 26 Federal Plaza. They were swiftly disappeared, sent to a detention center in Louisiana. That evening, every single major city newspaper, every TV channel reported on it. I wrote an angry email, not angry at the congressman. I wrote an angry email to the congresswoman's office, urging her to lead, advising her that families and parents were upset, and this is a time for us to rally in support of undocumented families, friends, and neighbors. I did get a response to that email, and that response was an intake form. And the advice I got from that office was, have that family fill out an intake form. That was it. And in that moment, I knew that Representative Meng did not feel the urgency of this moment that we all feel. These are not normal times. Look, I'm only 40 years old. I know some folks in this room are a little bit younger, some folks are a little bit older, but these are not normal times. We're under attack in 10 different ways, whether it's ICE disappearing our neighbors on the streets, or it's our resources, our country's riches being used to kill families overseas, or it's Trump paying himself and his cronies and his family members billions and billions and billions of dollars in money and allowing billionaires to buy our politics and our democracy. These are not normal times. And I realized in that moment that Representative Meng didn't see things that way, that she thought this was time to just sit back and hand out an intake form when a girl and her mother were disappeared from the streets of her district. So that's one thing I would do differently. I would show up in a big way. When it comes to ICE specifically, and there are many other differences, I am calling for the abolition of ICE. I'm calling for to abolish ICE. Representative Meng has called for them to display badges, maybe demask. I don't think that goes far enough. I don't think showing a badge would have stopped ICE agents from killing Alex Preddy or Renee Good. I don't think removing a mask would stop what's happening at Delaney Hall right now. I think 12,000 new officers were hired under President Trump in the last 18 months to ICE. There's no reforming that agency. A badge isn't going to fix them. It needs to be completely dismantled.
All right, Chuck, we'll get into immigration in a few because there's a question on that. So
we'll come back to it.
Yes, 2 minutes, cool. 2 minutes, Chuck, keep it within 2 minutes. We're trying to get that Knicks game too, so, you know. Okay, the future of Queens. The future of Queens. NY6 is one of the most diverse districts in America, spanning neighborhoods with very different economic realities. What do you believe is the single greatest challenge facing the district over the next decade? And what concrete federal actions would you pursue to address it?
I think the most urgent issue facing Queens right now is ICE. I do. And you may not feel it in Forest Hills, but we sure feel it in Jackson Heights and Corona and Elmhurst and Flushing. And many of you are fortunate enough to live in a neighborhood here that is not in the crosshairs of that agency, but there is fear still in the schools and the street, the parks of other parts of Queens in this district. That is the most urgent issue. The second most urgent issue is the crisis of affordability in this city and the complete lack of attention to the needs of working families. And what I mean is, people like my parents are losing health care. They're small business owners in Jackson Heights. They can't afford increasing ACA premiums. They're fortunate now to qualify for Medicare. They're now old enough. But they were uninsured for a while, afraid that one sickness, one injury would bankrupt our family. Families, parents, young parents of children can't afford the child care. They can't afford preschool, after school. Our families are getting crushed, and I always think about my parents who came to this country as street peddlers. Somehow a generation ago, they could work as street peddlers, buy a home, open a small business, raise 5 kids in this city. And that promise, that possibility is totally gone now. And I believe it's gone because our leaders have given up on that promise. Our leaders have become fundamentally bought, maybe corrupt is a better word. Leaders like Representative Meng, who take money not from the grassroots, but power their campaigns with oligarch money, with corporate PAC money, with casino lobbyist money. And so I believe that you work for who pays you. You work for who pays you. My campaign is powered by ordinary individual people. My opponent's campaign is basically powered by the company whose letterhead is in the last bill you got in the mail. She has taken money from, it's a long list, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Con Edison, Coinbase, Pfizer, the American Hospital Association, name your insurance company. That is how she runs her politics, and I believe that is who she is serving. And so when she won't say abolish ICE, I believe that is because she takes money from ICE contractors, and she has personal investments in ICE contractors. When she won't vocally call for Medicare for all, I believe that's because she takes money from big pharmaceutical companies and hospital corporations and insurance companies. When she won't vocally call for peace, for a ceasefire, I believe that's because she takes a lot of money from defense contractors and APAC.
Thank you.
We're gonna hit everything one more.
You see the passion. Okay, the next question is concerning housing. Many families in Northeast and Central Queens feel squeezed between rising housing costs, increasing property taxes, and concerns about neighborhood character. What role should the federal government play in addressing affordability while preserving the stability of existing communities?
So the federal government has a huge role to play. And the biggest thing and the most transformative thing the federal government can do when it comes to housing is build it. Build it. Build more housing. A century ago, under President FDR, we built tens upon tens of thousands of units of public housing in New York City. It's still standing today, and it's not in good shape, but it still stands today. Housing like the Bland houses in downtown Flushing, Queensbridge houses, Red Hook houses, those were built as an aspirational home for working New Yorkers, affordable for families, close to factories and ports and shops and commercial districts. They had murals of an idealistic future New York where families could live and prosper. The federal government used to do that. Today, it is banned from building such housing. It is banned. There is a law passed in the late 90s under President Bill Clinton called the Faircloth Amendment that explicitly prevents the federal government from building new public housing. I think the federal government can repeal that ban. It can unlock billions and billions of dollars, and we should have a new wave, millions of new units of social housing, public housing built in this city and this country.
Thank you for that. The next topic will be about public safety. Many residents tell us they want both safe neighborhoods and fair policing. How would you evaluate the current state of public safety in Queens, and what federal policies would you support to improve safety while maintaining public trust?
It's a real good question. You know, everybody deserves to feel safe. Every single one of us deserves to feel safe in our homes and our communities. That goes as much for a middle-class homeowner in Forest Hills as well as a low-income family living in the land houses in Flushing. Every single one of us deserves to feel safe in our communities. Now, what does that look like? I can tell you it doesn't look like being targeted or terrorized or discriminated against by law enforcement. Because too often public safety means increase the number of police, flood the zone, go after certain communities, certain black and brown communities in this city. I think public safety means attacking the root causes of crime. And for me, a lot of the root causes are people living in desperation. If people had their basic needs met by the government, basic needs like health, basic needs like food, shelter, basic needs like childcare, there will be a whole lot less crime in New York City in this country. And so I think that's what the federal government can do. We do have enough in this country to provide for every single one of us. Believe it or not, we are the richest country in the world. We can take care of all of our basic needs and then some. And that would absolutely increase the safety of our communities.
So for the next question, we're going to be shifting back to immigration. New York 6 is home to generations of immigrant families who came here legally, sought asylum, overstayed visas, sponsored relatives, built businesses, and became American citizens. At the time, many voters believed the current immigration system is broken. If you were helping write a comprehensive immigration bill tomorrow, what would be your top 3 priorities, and what compromises would you be willing to make to get legislation passed?
That's a real question. Absolutely true. Every single one of us, unless you're Lenape or one of the First Nations of this country, you came from somewhere else at some point, whether you're Ashkenazi, Albanian, Afghan, Colombian, Ecuadorian, Korean, Chinese, Cantonese, Indian. I mean, I can literally go for 2 hours listing every beautiful part of the world that people in Queens have come from. So we all came from somewhere else. We built this city and this entire country. I think that when it comes to comprehensive immigration reform, the first thing we have to do is acknowledge that there are 12 million people in this country who are already here, already building homes and futures and raising families, and those people deserve to feel safe here and deserve to have legal status. I believe in pathways to citizenship for undocumented people. I believe in pathways to citizenship for semi-documented people, the dreamers who have DACA, people on temporary protected status, people who are waiting long, drawn-out asylum cases. I also believe there should be pathways to citizenship for people on temporary visas, F1 student visas, H1Bs, L1 visas. So we need to create true pathways that allow people who want to work, live, and prosper and raise their families in the country, just like everyone has done forever in this country. We need ways for them to do that. And after that, we can talk about the border and having a regularized system, but we need to establish pipelines that can manage the inflow, because right now, it's a big jumbled mess. You know, I was a visa officer in Juarez, Mexico. I did thousands of visa interviews during my career as a diplomat, and let me tell you, the system is fundamentally broken. It is cruel. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Thank you for that. The next topic is addressing Metropolitan Park Casino Project. You have been a vocal critic of the Metropolitan Park Casino Project. However, since the project has been given the approval already, many elected officials have argued that the focus should shift to holding the developers accountable and ensuring that the promised community benefits are delivered. Is that enough? As someone seeking to represent this district in Congress, what specific actions would you take, not just to monitor the project, but to shape its impact on surrounding neighborhoods and protect the interests of the local residents?
It's not enough. It's not enough to hold them accountable. That's what my opponent wants to do. She says, hey, it's too late, it's a done deal. We have to mitigate the damage. That makes no sense to me. I don't see a casino at Citi Field today, do you? I see a parking lot. The casino is not built yet. It does not have to be built. We don't have to allow the harm to happen and then try to mitigate it and then get some community benefits out of it. It is not built yet, and it can be stopped. And anyone who says otherwise, go check their donor list. Check their donor list. What I will say is, the casino is a terrible idea. I think we all know that. For those of you who've been to Atlantic City, I think we know that casinos in big cities don't work. They don't bring riches and prosperity and good jobs. It leads to blight, it leads to increased crime, it leads to gambling addiction, which can destroy families. And especially when you put a mega casino between communities of working class, low income immigrants, you're asking for exploitation. Come on, it's common sense. And so it is not built yet, it can be stopped. And the reason people aren't speaking up, and that includes my opponent, is because they have taken a check. Please look this up. My opponent has taken checks from casino lobbyists, multiple casino lobbyists. That's why she has not said a single word about that project or the multi-year community engagement process. This is the biggest economic development project in the history of her tenure as a member of Congress. You would think she would hold one town hall to see what her community thinks about this. Because do you guys all want a casino?
No.
That is why here, on every single door that our campaign has knocked, we've knocked more than 50,000 doors. I haven't met a single person who wants this casino, which begs the question, how did they get those approvals? They got them by buying every single politician who voted yes on a city land use bill, on a state bill for parkland alienation. They got it by buying the silence and the complacency of people who should be hosting some kind of community engagement to see where the community stands. Because I know where the community stands. I know where you guys stand in the casino. I know where I stand in the casino. It's a terrible idea, and it can be stopped. I would ask you to join the fight, by the way. There is a fight. There's a lawsuit against it, ongoing right now. There will be a rally and an action this Saturday at Citi Field, 1 p.m. I'm happy to share details about that. It is not built yet. It can be stopped. We don't have to settle for mitigating harms that don't exist yet.
Thank you. So the next question is concerning the true representation in this district. One of your most frequent criticism of Congresswoman Meng is the amount of money she has received from pro-Israel political action committees, including AIPAC, as well as affiliated groups. Her supporters would argue that her campaign contributions do not determine how she votes and that she is ultimately accountable to the voters of New York 6. Why do you believe that these contributions matter, and what concerns do they raise about elected officials who represent their constituents? Also, what reforms would you support to ensure that members of Congress remain primarily accountable to their constituents rather than to large donors, independent expenditures groups, or national political organizations?
So I don't think at this point it's any secret what AIPAC is. It may have been a few years ago, but let's be clear, AIPAC isn't a pro-Jewish organization. I don't think they're even a pro-Israel organization. I think they're a pro-Netanyahu organization at this point. And what they do is they pump political campaigns full of millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And they choose candidates that they know will vote in favor of Benjamin Netanyahu's priorities. And he, let me be clear, has been waging a genocide. And I don't use that term lightly. I do not use that term lightly. Against Palestinians in Gaza. That has been funded by US taxpayers, by our dollars, $3.8 billion a year in a blank check to that prime minister. I think that is what AIPAC has done. They fund someone like my opponent to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars every cycle. And it's not a surprise that after that someone like Representative Meng votes alongside Republicans to support Benjamin Netanyahu's defense against charges of war crimes in the International Criminal Court. I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that she votes every single year to reapprove unconditional military aid to the state of Israel. Military aid that is conditional everywhere else in the world that it goes, where there's vetting for human rights. It's called Leahy laws. I won't get into the details of it. And so that is the problem of taking so much money from one source. You are bought. There are huge strings attached. To fix it, I think we absolutely have to overturn Citizens United. Congress can do that. They can increase the number of justices. They can set the conditions of their terms, get rid of lifetime appointments and instill some term limits. We can ban congressional stock trading, because that is also ridiculous. That is allowed, that Congress members can trade on inside information and make themselves rich. We should also create a federal matching program like what exists in New York City and New York State, so that small dollar individual contributions can outweigh big checks from corporate PACs and lobbyists.
Awesome, thank you so much. The next question is about your personal ties to Congressmember Meng. Your father, John Park, has long been active in Queens Democratic politics and has supported Congresswoman Grace Meng in the past, and you said you also door knocked for her in the past. Now you are challenging a well-established incumbent with deep relationships throughout the political community. How has the dynamic shaped your campaign? Have you found that organizations, political clubs, labor groups, or elected officials are reluctant to engage in this race because of those existing relationships? And what does that tell you about how political power works in Queens today?
It tells me that Representative Meng is very good at networking and building a political machine, and she has done it. She has done it. She doesn't spend time here, but she spends a lot of time building relationships with other elected officials, with certain groups. My dad is a district leader, to be clear. He has worked a long time in the Korean community. He did huge voter registration drives in the 1990s. And I'm very proud of that. And he learned a bitter lesson in the 80s, that for struggling immigrant communities that are looked by politicians, access to power is critical. Access to power is critical, because when somebody shuts off your heat in your apartment, you gotta know who to call to fix it. If someone breaks into your small business in Jackson Heights, you want the police to respond, I'm sorry, they won't respond unless you know the right person to call to make it happen. And so he learned, along with so many other communities that are neglected in this city, that you have to have someone to call. As a matter of fact, he hosted a fundraiser for Grace Meng a month before I announced, because that access was so important. I don't think that's how things should work. I don't think that a member of Congress and that members of the public should have to rely on that kind of access, that network, that there shouldn't be this preferential treatment for some groups and not others. Grace Meng has been incredibly successful in building those relationships. She is endorsed by probably every single elected official in the district, city, state. She's endorsed by institutions that interviewed me, and that clearly have different values from her. But those institutions have told me behind closed doors that they're afraid to challenge somebody who controls a lot of funding, who can decide not to sponsor legislation that is critical to them. So I don't blame these organizations for either staying out of this race or for supporting her, because they also believe, like my dad did, that access to power is important. I'm hoping to change that paradigm. I don't think access is what a member of Congress should be wielding. I think they should be working for the people.
Thank you for that. So the next question is about your path to victory.